Ray Ives, dependent underdog. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe. I never thought I'd actually say that to somebody, but please subscribe. I think this journey is going to be worthwhile. I think it's going to entice you to be the catalyst of your own life. So keep doing it. Keep trying. Raise the stakes. So the biggest thing in part 2 is raising the stakes. I came to a point where the double lifestyle was really starting to weigh on me. And that double lifestyle was working the corporate 9 to 5, and then getting on a plane or getting on a mega bus and going to Chicago, from Minneapolis to Chicago, bartending on Saturday, leaving on Sunday, working on Monday, next leaving on Friday, working on Saturday, coming back Sunday, so on and so forth. I started getting upgraded to first class, and that was really cool. I was like, I never was in first class. I couldn't believe it. Long story short, I was starting to get a little burnt out, and I thought to myself, it's probably time to stop being a bartender and dedicate my entire craft and professional career to making money. And I had to have the conversation, the negotiation with Medea, who is my boss, and really get to the point where I could leave that, right? But in the meantime, I was still learning. I was still learning the trade. I was still learning, the likes of Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, Les Brown, all these guys. And I was starting to get an ROI. And then I would stop and reflect on people that really did things that were impressive. And I thought about people, and again, not just in my industry, but in the world, really. So I thought even people that were living, people that had passed. So I thought about people like Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor got up there and his art was comedy. I looked at different U.S. presidents, Michael Jordan and sports, Thomas Edison. And I just started reflecting and thinking, this world is unlimited. And once I started getting that momentum, things were just happening. And my biggest mentor at the time, and still was, somebody from the Middle East, Nazareth. He was a rabbi, a messenger, a healer of men, healer of women, and just a practical human. I can do this. I started putting these names and faces together and what they had accomplished. And I was like, okay, I want more. I want to put this together. So set up an agenda with my boss, Medea, and I had everything set out perfectly. I knew prior to the meeting that I was direct and wanted to talk about my salary and basically stop making this crazy travel. But I also knew I had become such a valuable asset to the category management team, to the director of the department, to leadership, that I was giving these reports. And doing such a great job. If I had ever walked into a room, I left it better than I was there. I made sure that every report was on time, was crisp, was well formatted, and everybody really started to respect my work. And with that comes, work ethic and determination and sacrifice and all those things. And so when I sat down to negotiate, I really just reminded her of that. In not an egotistical way, in a way that I was adding value. And one of the biggest things, so this was a huge corporation. It was the Innovation Center. And in the Innovation Center, they had a mock grocery store and they had all these labs. Nobody had access to that. The administrative assistant to the president of the department, who was really, he was part of the executive team, Miss O'Leary, I'll call her. So Miss O'Leary and I, we always exchanged niceties, and she was intense. She was very direct. You had to answer her questions quickly. She spoke fast. She asked a lot of questions. She kind of put you down in some ways, but it was really, really quick. And long story short, nobody, and when I say nobody, had access to, the test kitchen. But at the time, we were doing a full case, a full bakery mock-up of a lot of things, and the company I was working for, the food broker, was in charge of that. And so as all these items were coming in and all these samples were coming in, I would have to go to Mrs. O'Leary, get the key or get the badge that would scan in. And she'd say, okay, I have to walk you down. You can't be down there alone. Absolutely not. And I totally understood. I respected her. And she would walk me down there. She would open up the labs. She would open up the mock grocery store. And we did that, and it became really, really tiresome for her because it was a long walk from her desk all the way there, to the point where she became so comfortable with me that she gave me access. And not only access with her badge, it did start like that. She would say, okay, look, like, I'm going to give you my badge, take it, open it. I trust you, bring it back, to the point where my badge alone, without her badge, gave me access. My boss would come in and say, okay, we need to set this up. We need samples. We need to get everything positioned for this executive walkthrough. And guess who had access to that? I had access to that. Nobody else had access to that. And when the day came, when the C-suite executives within the corporation from other divisions were having this walkthrough, I felt like a proud published author. The reports that I had put together for the category management team were presented for this walkthrough. It was like art. It was perfectly formatted. The charts made sense. It highlighted what was working. It worked on things that needed improvement. And so you'd walk in this huge room with beautiful cake cases and baked bread and apple pies, and everything was set. And then on an easel, there was this huge, had to be 4 feet by 3 feet, and it was my work, and it just felt great. So with that, I reflected on and brought that up in the negotiation, and basically said the things I have access to really benefit the company to a point that they're becoming more influential and much more embedded into the corporate culture of this organization. And if I were to leave, that access goes as well. That wasn't just going to get transferred from me to my boss. Like, Mrs. O'Leary held that tightly. And I always remembered to take care of Mrs. O'Leary. No matter what, I would leave a European layer cake, a beautiful strawberry shortcake perfectly on her desk, just to say thank you. We had so many samples coming in and out on a weekly basis for extended amounts of time, almost a year. Like, we had all these beautiful cakes coming in. And my boss during the negotiations was saying, you know, she's very proud of how I accelerated, how I learned the job, how I have access, and how the category management team and how the directors relied on me. And I was like, okay, perfect. I was like, with that being said, and I said it in a percentile of what this position should be getting paid. And I threw the number out there, and I threw out, and I'm not ashamed to say like how much it was, and it's not a brag, it's just factual information. I believe that the category analyst position should get paid $80,000 a year, which at the time was a huge number for me, and I couldn't even conceptualize it. So here I was, and she pressed back a little bit, and she was like, you know, the role doesn't pay that much. We've never paid that much. She's like, but I understand what you're saying. Medea, you have to understand that I am traveling. I am like giving my energy, my time, leaving on Friday, traveling to Chicago, traveling back from Chicago to Minneapolis, working the job, providing this value, having access. And I was like, it's time to showcase not only my talents, but their loyalty to me. So went through all this, and Medea was like, okay. She's like, I agree, and I'm going to talk to the president about it. So 2 days later, I came back, and she's like, okay, perfect. She's like, the raise is approved. You are going to get the $80,000 per year. And I just couldn't believe it. It was like so mesmerizing. And that was a great moment of reflection, for the underdog, for the book, for everything. It just made a lot of sense. So stay tuned. A lot to share.